Yes, sir. Have some fun and get it done.
All right, what kind of man would I be if I wasn't able to interview myself with these questions? So that's what this one's about. This is the zero interview of Matt on Mad Action. That's right, all right. Here we go. How would you summarize the story of your life up to this point as seen through the lens of your art? It's a great question. That's a deep question. Well, there's a lot to say about a lot of things. I've been living on the road for over 12 years at this point. And that's according to my own style of that, not how anyone else is wanting to create a story of what that means or what that looks like. There's endless stories within this, and by default, I've become a storyteller. And there's a lot of power in the stories that we're telling ourselves, and stories are even more powerful when we're being honest with ourselves. And we're recognizing the patterns within these natural progressions versus using stories to like gaslight or pervert reality. But again, like, you know, I don't make the rules, and the truth is always, always, always flowing. You know, there's a lot of power in storytelling, and I think, again, it calls a lot of attention to the media. I haven't been on social media. I was at one point when I was in high school and college, but it is really, I again, like, call it my own form of autism. I just am really not interested in the things that it seems as if everyone else is interested in. And maybe that comes from a lot of different things. Maybe it's from being given a bunch of vaccinations when I was a child. You know, that maybe has something to do with something, but I don't feed that. It just, maybe that's part of it. You know, maybe it has to do with being raised in the Catholic Church and being isolated amongst other students in my grade school for being quiet and disciplined, and like the select like altar boy to be taken out of class and being around funerals and being around weddings like at least twice a week, you know, and going to the cemetery, and, you know, again, just being in those types of like emotional spaces with families, and again, having a separate experience from my peers, and, you know, what that brings about within my own perception of life. And you know, yeah, like doing well in school and recognizing patterns of just, again, like what the teachers are wanting to hear versus what I'm wanting to say, and that type of like subservient obedience that is rewarded, you know, and like being groomed to become a priest. And again, it goes on and on. There's so many things to say about so many different things, and like simultaneously a very strained and a very distant relationship with my father, who had serious drug issues and hid behind his career, and on and on it goes, on and on it goes. Many stories, and that's, again, it's reflective in the quality of intensity that I live with, and what I've had to come to terms with, and how I've had to soften so many qualities for my own peace of mind, and also like a greater harmony now that I've learned how to really establish a foundation of trusting, which comes from my personal connection with nature. A lot of what has happened over these 12 years has been a return to nature in my own ways, and again, not from like this militaristic and like man versus nature, and I gotta like survive in the wilderness and like learn how to use my hair to make a fire, you know what I mean, and all of the, like those types of like there's a place for that, but I think in my life, in my opinion, and from my perspective, layered by a lot of different things, and certainly never really having a sense of being under any guidance or any other like adult male role model's wing, is that my connection has come from a grounded place within the world and a connection with a cosmic order. And a lot of these things, again, is where I've made sense of confusion, and it feels to be confirming in my life, because it isn't fueled by mythological dissociation, but rather a critical transparency and openness at all moments about what's going on. And again, I don't understand on a personal level what are the stresses and the pressures of having a career and all the bills and all of this, because I've never chosen to step in that direction. It hasn't really been relevant for me. I've embraced being an outsider, because from my experience, there wasn't any conversations that were happening that pulled my interest, and I didn't give a shit about getting the attention of people that were immediately already looking down on me in the first place, right? That's not the appeal that moves me, and that's more of, again, like this quality of compassion for the human experience, where it's starting on the foot of respect. And it's not, again, like that whole thing about like I'm not giving everybody my bank account number or my social security number, right? Like that's delusional, but like I'm not going to create a story about another person unless, again, it's that whole thing about pattern recognition and reactivity and where a person is emotionally and how aware he or she is of where that's coming from. And again, that whole thing of like it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to think that every other thing is the reason why, And on and on it goes. Again, pattern recognition, calling into accountability, taking responsibility, cutting ties and dissolving past connections, right? And again, as it goes on and on, there's so many different qualities of this that are tied to existential crisis and suicidal contemplation, a sense of betrayal, or a sense of worthlessness in the eyes of other people that I thought that I had love with and I thought that I respected, but it was more, again, of like maintaining the facade of like a cultural identity or like a popularity game. And again, like that, again, on and on, so many things of like how much of that even is just structured upon like the agreement to a falsehood of reality, of like that, even like that it's not about figuring out anything in reality. It's about playing this bullshit game the best that you can. And if you call into question the stupidity of the game, then you're the loser. And it's like, wow, that's what we're doing? That's what's going on? Okay. All right. Right. Yeah. It's quite a theater to witness, and it's certainly a colossal facade that really doesn't hold any ground. So all of this said, I had a critical turning point in 2020, January 25th of 2020. I was in a serious car accident where I was pronounced dead at the scene, and jaws of life, and they pulled me out. And again, I've been piecing it together, and again, it's been a bigger personal relationship with life and all of these different things where I totally lost consciousness, but I have this small window of time where I remember I was conscious, and I think it was because they were pulling my body out from the wreckage, but they assumed I was dead. And the pain was so severe because it was so on me that I was, for whatever, again, the body intelligence came back, and it made it known to those people that I was still, there was still life inside of my body despite the wreckage. So then I was out again, and it took me a while to even, because I've been really, over the years, I've been sitting with what was really going on in that entire time? What do I remember? And where was I? And I returned to my body with a tube down my throat, couldn't feel from my hips down, and I looked out the window. I looked towards the window with the sun setting and my friend sitting in the windowsill with tears down her face, and then she shared with me what had happened. And but I bring it back to the point of where that even started. It started with me spending the evening over at her house, and again, just for the sake of context, she was a platonic friend. She was involved with this clay studio that was made out of a greenhouse in the back of my friend's apartment, but I was living in that greenhouse and simultaneously in this little Honda, and involved in again, this was in Santa Cruz, and this was the full moon, the Leo full moon on January 25th. And we were gonna just have a little fun sort of divination. Again, it wasn't weird blood and or candles, or it was just we're sitting for tea and talking about our life, and what do we see in the cards or in the imagery, and how do we relate that to our processes. And in the morning, I was planning on going and meeting with two other friends for a run on the beach, and then going for a swim at the as the sun was rising over the hills of Santa Cruz, type of thing. But in the mornings, before the sun comes up and it's still very dark, the fog is very heavy. It's just sort of how it goes up there, especially up in the hills, overlooking most of Santa Cruz, and that's where she was living. And I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning or so, and turned around, got down to the intersection that was, again, it wasn't it was just a two lane, not even, it was just a one lane road type of thing, stop sign, was going to turn left, super heavy fog, didn't see any headlights in the fog. It was a Saturday morning, I believe. Didn't think anything of it. Just, keeping my eyes on the road, looked, was okay, and pulled out, and just like that, right in the hospital room, from that plate, that's what it felt like originally. But again, as more time came, and again, this type of relationship with these types of experiences that I remember very clearly. And again, I don't know how many other people have had these types of experiences from my travels and the type of people that I'm typically interacting with. It sounds like it's more common than not, but I know that I'm interacting mostly with very unconventional people. But it seems to be a very common theme, and certainly when a person has moved beyond mythology and it isn't about still like a human embodiment and the idea that we maintain our identity in this like other dimension of existence, and that it is the same stories that we've been telling ourselves, and that we're seeing these like figments of, again, like human forms that are telling us things, but rather I think the reality, the actual living reality is so hard for so many people to actually fathom, that they're again, like we could say a lot of different things, but their own ego protects themselves by creating an image that they can handle because of where they're at in their own development, where it just would otherwise be so overwhelming that they wouldn't be able to interact at all. It just would be so shaking, And then again, like, it's not easy to like become totally disembodied and come into the awareness of like, oh shit, this is what they're talking about, of how life is a dream. And in the same way as like when I wake up in the mornings and I've had a dream, that dream stays with me until it sort of like is like smoke. It's like effervescent, and it's like if I don't maintain like attention to it and connection with it, then I lose it. It is no more a thought. And this was what I was feeling in this moment of, I guess, like, release from my human form, like my mortal body. And I was in the realm that is always existent, and it's like, oh shit, like, but because of, again, like the density of Matt's journey, my life, again, like I don't preach egolessness, and at the same time there's a paradox involved that needs to just be accepted, and the more that we accept it, the more that we can be dynamic with our movements through this life. And I think it's in my direct experience, and even within this personal message right now, like in this other realm, and again, like it's beyond form, and it's beyond like easy communication currently to be able to shed light on like what it is, because again, it's beyond form, and it's just something else there's just something else that's going on, and just these relationships and these conversations, and again, it's beyond language, but it's understood that there's a communication going on, and it's again, it's very intuitive. And it was like, in essence, like, Matt, like, dude, like, you can, if you want to, like, go back, and you know what you're getting yourself into, and like, we're gonna continue to be with you, and like move forward with this creative process. And like, yeah, like we understand that it's very challenging to be human, and all of these things, and like but again, like it's part of life, and it's part of the creative curiosity of like what's going on many dimensions of life. Or like, Matt, if that's too much, like we also are cool with like, we can reconnect, recalibrate, and like just look at other things that are going on and like what else we want to be doing in like the again like the multiverse of existence that is so beyond like the human experience. You know what I mean? Uh, so I had some time to really sit with it, and I was already feeling the fading and the returning to like what was my ever being, and like the recognition again of just like, wow, like that's a crazy thing to really come. It's understandable why like immortal sentient being chooses to lose sight of that to become mortal, to then like try to integrate that into mortality. Anyway, hopefully this is making sense. Hopefully you're hearing where I'm coming from, and how this is still part of the first question. How long? 21 minutes in. Okay. Not too bad. Not too good, but not too bad. Because I feel very tied to generating like new patterns within humanity that like bring it full circle regarding like our animal nature and like our indigenous ways and these qualities of tradition, but how much they've become bastardized and diluted through time, and people have lost sight of so many things because like unfortunately a lot of the nostalgia that people carry is still just a story, and it isn't really wholesome, which is why it hasn't stood up for so many. And it's time to just create a new sense of culture, and be able to like organically allow for it to unfold without pressurizing and feeling like this desperate tension of avoiding an apocalyptic doom, or like this like strange judgment of a supreme sentience that wants to put us to the test. Otherwise, it's going to enslave us and imprison us in some eternal hellscape. And if that isn't a projection of a person's distrust and paranoia and fear, I don't know what else is. Like, even the idea of salvation is still fear-based. And it's like no wonder that there's so much pressure and tension in everything that everyone does. Because it seems as if, again, our society and our culture, I'm going to just speak as an American, but again, like it's tied to the Western ideals and the effects of imperialism globally. But it sounds good what's being spoken about, but it's being the actions aren't synchronized with the words. Right, so the words are this thing, but then the actions are another thing. But those distorted and disjointed and diseased actions have taken on the language of something that's almost the opposite, that is like altruistic and genuine and healthy, you know what I mean, and like disciplined, and it's all you got to do is be honest with yourself and take a step back and really see what's going on, and it becomes very clear of how humor can really free us in so many of these problems. But I digress, is basically what I'll say right now. So I could go on and on about all of these things, but in my return to health and my return to and who I am, and piecing everything back together, I'll save you the whole story. Maybe I'll save it for another time, about the total collapse of my blood family, and how that was coinciding with the emergence of my chosen family with my partner and her 2 daughters, and how that was tied with really helping her up and helping her stand on her own feet, and in many ways, like, ceremoniously addressing severe toxicity within contradiction with like the baby daddy, and like what he represented within like new age movements, and again, like that type, because like, again, we live in a supremely broken society where if you're not like inbred with affluence and somehow tied to the lottery winning of the stock market, or like you're, again, like a mercenary for the military, and like you're governmentally bound, and you've sold off your own like again, that's a lot of that people don't really look at, but like, again, like how the sort of like kind of sell off your First Amendment rights with the military to be given a like compensation monthly. And then, like, again, like all of these conversations where, like, if you really want to look at it, it's like, oh, like, it's not, we don't live in socialism, but it's just like a military's mutated form of socialism, where these traumatized people from the military then, like, police society because they're injected into society. It's just, again, like, it's crazy. It's very very apparent, and there's like no, again, like, it's like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna work for the city and like take like just collect trash, or like sometimes there's bakeries, but like, again, like, or like work in a restaurant or a bar, or like work for a landscaping company for cutting grass or cutting down trees, or again, like the military affiliations with the railroad companies. And again, it's just like, the more that you look, it seems like there's so many opportunities, but it's really about an allegiance to a narrative versus really freedom of option, and sort of like like basically leveraging a person's desperation on their freedom, and then convincing them that they've made the right choice. And that's when, like, the Pavlovian model of conditioning like rewards the subservience, and then you parrot those narratives of what freedom is, and how much like how much, like, oh, when I let go of that, then I finally found peace. And then again, it's just like, addiction to pharmaceuticals being prescribed by doctors, and alcoholism normalized, and just on and just even just again like just the new trends within psychotropics and psychedelics, and just the continuation of escaping through drugs and claiming it to be virtuous and conscious decisions. Meanwhile, nothing's being addressed because the people that really, historically should be doing that are being paid by the government to endlessly be within a fixed adolescent state, while everyone is just like, oh, thank you for your service. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Yes. Oh, please, military. Oh, God. And it's just like nobody gives a fuck, actually. Like, nobody, the whole thing is so deeply corrupted. And the more that I have interactions with veterans, like, that have killed people, like, I just spent it, anyway, I could go on and on, but just, like, it's insane. Because, like, if you actually look at the history and the patterns, like, you see, like, wow, it has been actually the mass murder of civilians, claiming them to be terrorists every time. Wow, I've really moved on from my story, but it's all part of the story. It's just this whole thing is it's so out of touch with reality. And that's why we have the problems that we have, is that it's like this machismo and bravado trying to claim its ability to rewrite history according to its own semantics so that it can avoid responsibility and accountability for the decisions that it's made. And so it's trying to approach from every different angle of the human equation to pervert people's own intuition and their own awareness of what's going on into the narratives. And it's just like, it's so pressurizing that if you step out of it, you can be in the light of day. And like, once you taste what actual nourishment is, then there's no debate, because what is going on is so malnourished, and it is entirely leveraged on the continued deprivation of an individual from accessing knowledge, yet claiming that that's freedom. So, over time, especially over this past year, I've come to my own self-initiation of stepping into the role of being the father of these girls, and it's been natural. It's been a progression, but it's developed to that point, and now there's a new foundation, and things are growing from that foundation, and that shift of perspective and the inclusion of my partner and her daughters into my identity as an artist, in the aim of community and collaboration and the celebration of again, like a multi-generational conversation that just needs to grow, and it can only grow from a sincere joy for life and a trusting of where things are at. And with this interview series, I mentioned in the write-up that I'm seeking quality connection, not quantity connection, because I know the only way for things to really move forward is when we really invest into each other through lifestyle integration and start living with each other, and desire for that, and desire to be exposed for our triggers, and desire to see where our reactions are, and desire to see where our conditioned patterns of distrust are wanting to pull us away, but we can override those programs and return to trusting, and to see past those points of concern and see that it was really this boogeyman of paranoia. And I've learned that for myself of like my only, I say I've made mistakes. Like I can't say I've made like crazy fucking mistakes. You know, like it's a spectrum. I think it would be more evidenced in the way that I am and the way that I communicate if I made some like overwhelmingly obnoxious mistakes. I've made mistakes, but I've been like aware enough to know like when are the risks worth taking, and you hear what I'm saying anyway. Blah blah blah. It goes on and on. There's a lot of stories involved with all of this, but currently I'm, even with this passage into this interview series, and now that things have, the dust has settled and the fog has cleared with my partner and her daughters and the legal processes and her gaining full custody, and again setting some serious boundaries around the toxic nature of her own family, and coming to terms with her own sovereignty, and that there's nothing wrong with setting boundaries when like these patterns of toxic behavior aren't being addressed or aren't being acknowledged. And the idea of forgiveness is like it's a double infliction, where it's like we have to not only deal with that behavior, but then we also have to accept it, and that it's like, okay, hey, if you love me and you say that you love me, right? Well, this is who I am, so you have to accept it, or what? You're gonna control me? You're gonna try to tell me what to be? You're gonna tell me what to do? You know what I mean? And it's just like, again, like this. It doesn't make any sense when you actually look at it, because it's just, again, like baby boomers and Gen X people of like it's just retarded, and it's like no wonder our government is the way that it is, because the living philosophy makes no sense. And like it's because of the lack of communication about like what is going on here. It's like, well, we have the money, so we have to be doing something right. It's like, okay, from what? Let's look at what happened to the native population here. Like, you think biological warfare just started recently? You think those blankets, like, you think that those were just altruistic blankets? Like, those weren't the blankets being used in the hospitals in Europe, and then they weren't brought over here and oh, yay, hey, we're Christians and we love you, and please stay warm. And here's our blankets. And then it's like, oh, they got sick because like these were infected with like the worst, like whatever that was called, the plague. Well, I guess the Native Americans, that was what God wanted for them. And it's like, okay, karma is a strange reality that seems to be lost in the Western spiritual philosophies. Just saying that. On and on it goes. But I feel like in this way I've brought it back to the present, and again, opened up a lot of space, always open for conversations. But it's part of the ceremony of now. It's an exploration and experimentation of integration with community through communication, and seeing where people are at in the aim of community, and holding the space in my own way, and wanting to suggest solutions, because I believe I have a lot that I think take into consideration many other people's interests. But I can't sell it, Okay. What has been your relationship with drugs? Any mind-altering substances, illicit or socially acceptable or prescribed, in the past and to the present? That's a very deep question. That's a very personal question. Well, I brought it up way earlier about vaccinations and those types of things. And my mother is a nurse, and all the women in my immediate and extended family all nurses, because again, like, what other jobs are there than being a nurse? Or what, it's just like it's just a broken society. um and again, it's like, or a teacher or librarian, you know or the military, for a woman. But people are driven by a genuine desire to heal and to help with alleviating the suffering of humanity, and so they are directed into those avenues, and that their intuition is muddled by their own ignorance, and that injects a sort of a programmed of confusion and self-doubt. It's the same forms of indoctrination that happen with the military, of just like belittling a person to make them feel small and insignificant, and they don't know anything, and to build them back up into their idea of what that means. And then it's just, again, it's trauma bonding, and all of the, just it goes on and on. Yeah, I was pretty. A lot of the issues that I had in grade school and through high school came from the fact that I was wanting to honor my mother and father by not doing drugs, and turning away from my friends at those times because they were getting into drugs. And but my senior year of high school, it's not very frequently, but I started to go over to my friend's house, and with other other high school friends, and drinking alcohol, and I don't even think I was like smoking weed ever. Maybe like once or twice I tried it or something like that. But I kind of went off the handle in my senior year of high school altogether, just because of the absurdity of it all, and that's a whole other story, because this question is about drugs. So in college, while I was still living at my parents' home, I began to explore a personal relationship with marijuana, and did it really healthy. I got a little, what's that called? Like a vape. You put the dry in, and then it toasts it. It was really nice, and I was able to do it really, nonchalantly, and was able to go for walks, and kept it to myself, and kept it real clean. And I was trying to figure out what I was wanting to do, and at first I went into school to be an entrepreneur. I went into business school, but then just the bullshit around all of it, and it really just was so unfulfilling, and I didn't see myself in that at all. And then I started getting into, like, I then started to get into like pre-med and studying kinesiology, and as my major, and chemistry and biology, and as my minors, and type of thing. And really began to have like exposure to the medical world directly, not just from the perspective of the women in my life, and began to look at the sickness of, I started learning a lot about the actual history behind World War II, independently, not from school, and the pharmaceutical industry's entire rise out of Nazi Germany. And that's not opinion. You can just look it up and see like Bayer Pharmaceuticals, and then, again, like it's just so obvious what's going on right now and where it's all come from, and the obscuring of the truth of history because of like the running from responsibility and the running away from accountability and societal retribution for severe injustices that are continuing to this day. So I started to read Paul Stamets' book of how to grow gourmet and medicinal mushrooms, and I started growing psilocybin mushrooms. I had a psilocybin, first off, I had a psilocybin journey for the first time in 2012 with my a close high school friend. I was now living on campus. We had a shared home on, I think it was 12th Street in North Philly. And I didn't want to try any other drugs, but I was curious about it. And, I had a friend of mine from high school that I really respected. I won't say his name, but I really admired him for his state of mind. I loved his family. He was very different from everyone else, and he really, him and his brother really were into mushrooms. And I didn't know, I did a little bit of reading on Erowid, and forget what the other one was. But anyway, and I felt like, okay, like there's enough here for me to feel like it's worth giving it a try despite maybe any consequences of it. And I read the Benton Book of the Dead building into that over the 2 days prior, and I also fasted for those 2 days. And me and my friend from high school, he just for clarity, he's not that, my friend I did the mushrooms with wasn't the friend that influenced me wanting to do mushrooms. So we took some mushrooms. We went down to the Philadelphia Art Museum, and it really changed my perspective. And I think it had a lot to do with how prepared I was and how much I was desiring for clarity on what I couldn't see, and it provided a lot of clarity, and certainly just about the beauty of life and what's accessible behind the, like, outside of the arena of the artificial structure. And I was curious what more was there, and I never had a feeling of connection in that way and a sense of being seen in that way in my entire life. And that's pathetic, because it was like mushrooms that made me feel like I was special. And that says a lot about my upbringing and where I've come from and my family. And not everyone needs that, definitely. But I think it was critical for my life, and I started to grow mushrooms after that, not long after, and taught myself how to grow mushrooms and was successful at that. And little by little, and again, by merit of my journey through college and wanting to trust in this institutional intelligence that was wanting to shape me and my peers into the new leaders of society and culture, that it was it was an illusion. It's false. It's a false narrative, because the people that are in those positions are only in select institutions that are inbred and self-selected, and everything else is for the sake of maintaining the illusion. So it's more about not what you know, but how well you can simply parrot and subscribe to this story. So me, my brother, and one of our like coworkers, we worked at like in like we were the muscle behind like the tech department of just like moving like big heavy computers like that were like maintaining the like whatever integrity of the university, and that's all we did. And we were just like curious of what else was going on. We took a flight out to Seattle. We went to like a I forget like Sasquatch music festival. Like again, just like a big, because that's all we have access to is just like whoever is most advertising seems to be most relevant. So we went to this music festival and we met people from Humboldt County, and I maintained connection with them, and one thing after another, me and my girlfriend at the time were driving out to pick up marijuana from Humboldt County and bringing it back and selling it, because like I was so sick of the bullshit, and I had started a Together Sustainable like subreddit and bringing people together for the sake of like creating a permaculture community in somewhere in Oregon. And again, like I just was acting upon desperation, but it was very much aligned and was noble and was well-meaning, but obviously I didn't live in that. I didn't know all of the things that would be involved, and blah blah blah, on and on it goes about as like the narrative of my life up to that point was shattering because of the falsehood behind it, regarding like the promises of what university represents and like what it will look like for the transition into society, and like that's such a lie, and that none of it is connecting with anything meaningful, and that all the doctors and all the EMTs and all the police are so overwhelmed and so spread thin because of the mismanagement of the people that are claiming to be the leaders, and it's done purposefully so that no attention is brought to their own corruption, so that everybody has to be fixing all the problems that come downstream of corruption. Meanwhile, these people are ensuring that all resources are sequestered for their own enrichment. Definitely. I didn't want to be a part of that, and there was no other things that were being afforded, and there was no conversation available, and like all the mafia, and like again, I was being attacked by people, like physically attacked by people, and just it's so annoying, the whole story. It's just a lot of bullshit, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm to blame for being born in Philadelphia. You know what I mean? Like I'm the blame. I'm the one to blame. It's like. It's again, like that's why suicide, it goes on and on. There's on and on and on it goes. Anyway, so we went out one time and picked up marijuana, and we were successful in that one. The second one, we got caught by a police officer, and again, it goes into all this stuff, and like again, like the strange police state around Obama, the Obama era, but that's a whole other conversation. Definitely. And we got caught, spent like 5 days in jail, and the police officer like told our university and because they like looked through our wallets and found our university ID cards, and my father worked for that university, so I had a free tuition there, and I, I again the humor of that was my fourth year, and I had enough credits to already graduate with like whatever that simple degree is, and um, my partner was a year younger than me, and she wanted to do something with her like engineering and architecture degrees. So I like it was a no brainer and obvious. I just took all the blame, and that she had nothing to really do with it. So she was suspended for a year, and I was expelled, and I had no money and had nothing, and I was expelled from university, and then I had to go back out to Humboldt County for court, and the judge like learned about all this stuff, and so they expunged it from my record, like stating that like the injustice was committed against me, and it's like again like it's just this is the like there's you can't expect anything less because of just how it's to be expected of just the absolute corruption across all elements of our society. So yeah, it was just like again like it gave me more clarity about the spiritual qualities of life, and what's really important, and sort of the sacrificial ceremony of relinquishing my identity upon this and desiring for something more, and like that in that immediate moment everything was like I like surrendered. And so my partner moved in with me and my brothers. We were living on Spring Garden, and I got a job on like the 50 something floor of one of the like high rises downtown, and had to wear like a vest and a bow tie for this restaurant, and was a pretty good experience in that way, and just again having a lot of exposure, a lot of different things, and being able to just like start life freshly, and that happened in like April was when like I was expelled, and by the next by September I had bought a van for $900 and was in process of converting it, and by December I moved out of that apartment, and one of me and my brother's mutual friends, but mostly his friend, took my room, and by April of that year, I guess it's 2014, 2000, I guess 2015. I guess 2015, so technically it's been 11 years in April. I apologize. I didn't do the math correctly. So 11 years come April of this year. I've been traveling, but it feels like, anyway, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, anyway, so I started traveling, and the first stop, one of my friends that was working in that restaurant had a connection with an ex-manager of that restaurant at like a music venue, like just like a touristy bullshit type of spot. It's called the Hangout on the Gulf Coast of Alabama, Gulf Shores. So that was the first place that I went to. I lived there until July, and then again it goes on, and LSD started to come into my experience before then, but it became more and more present. And anyway, a lot of story between things, and ended up out in Oregon um, by late July, early August of that same year, and just was living in Portland, Oregon, and got like a job as like a server for a brunch spot, and uh, working in the kitchen of Whole Foods so I could get free food, that was like seemingly good quality, but it was just, yeah, again, like what you would expect. And one of my other friends from that restaurant like started living in his car, and he found himself in southern Oregon, and he was connected with people that were growing marijuana, so he offered me a job as like a trimmer, and I went down there and was just cleaning up and trimming weed in my van, and like staying in sort of the collective farmhouse, and had good connections there, and felt like it was wholesome, and it felt like a good landing place, and like the boss man of that whole thing became close with me, and he knew that I loved mushrooms, and knew that I talked about them. So he offered me he offered me a project, and he gave me all the resources that I would need to grow as many mushrooms as I possibly could from November until like the next grow season. And during this period of time, my it was okay. So like it was a 5-bedroom, huge home in the middle of the woods, totally isolated from everyone. Really beautiful home, like huge windows, like a wood burning stove, like real nice wood everywhere, long driveway, and the guard dog of that like farmhouse was impregnated by one of the other guys' dogs, and so they had a litter of puppies, and me and my friend stayed with those puppies while the boss man and the boss lady went to Cuba. So when he came back, if we wanted one, we had the option of having a puppy, and so I had I had one of the puppies for myself, and so I was living in this home with a puppy, growing mushrooms, and my grandmother died, and only after her death did I come to recognize that she was, in essence, my mother, that she raised me, and with her death really began the transition of relevancy of any of my blood within my life. And I could go on and on about all of that, and there's so many stories, but I had gone to Australia sorry, this is a whole other story, but I had gone to Australia, and for like a month and a half or 2 months or something back in 2000, and I think that was 2012 or 2013, something like that, and met a German girl in a hostel, and we became pen pals, and then that turned into like a romantic, fiery thing. So she came out and lived with me in that 5-bedroom home with my puppy while I was growing mushrooms for 2 months, and traveled and all that. And then anyway, she went back, and then on and on the story goes, went and blah blah blah. Anyway, so I went and visited her in August for a whole month or so in Germany, and she was started in France and went into Germany, and down in Munich and up to the whatever that sea is, and I met her parents and saw all of her properties, and there was like, again, that whole European thing about, like, I don't know, it was hard for me to understand what she was wanting, or what the idea was in her mind. Obviously I was interested in partnership and wanting to get married, definitely, but not in that way. So, but yeah, again, like there's just like the whole breakdown of communication and sort of like maybe it's my own flavor of autism, I guess. But anyway, we're real successful in all that we grew that year between the gardens that we had, and got a pretty good payment from that. But just really, so again, just share all of that to give context of just the irony of all that came and went within 1 year's time of me being expelled from university. So within 1 year of me being expelled in university was I living in that 5-bedroom home. My grandmother died. I had grown all those mushrooms. I had paid off my lawyer's debt. And, like my German pen pal had come and visited me. And then, and all of that by merit of going and growing marijuana that wasn't even an option at any other point. So there's a lot more to all of these stories. I could share a lot, and I would say that what I'm really wanting to illustrate is my use of drugs is never in like isolation from the living experience, and that it's part of the movements through time, and that I'm not like working a 9 to 5 job and doing drugs to go to a show, but rather it's part of the entire life that I'm living in those ways. And I think that's what's made it really easy for me to certainly have a healthy relationship with them and have no sense of identity with them at all, or have a sense of like communal identity by using them. And that's actually one of the reasons why I've broken connection from those people in Southern Illinois, or sorry, not Southern Illinois, Southern Oregon, is that their process of growth was dependent and reliant upon their identity with drugs, versus like the recognition that there's far more value within sobriety, in my opinion. Anyway, I could go on and on about DMT and about ayahuasca. I haven't had really any like genuinely connected experiences with traditional ayahuasca. I've made my own ayahuasca with Syrian rue and Mimosa hostilis. And I know anybody that knows anything about that, like, yes, I know that's not ayahuasca. Like, it's a whole other thing that was part of my own experience. And like a surfer girl that I was seeing in Santa Cruz invited me to like a Santa Daime experience, which sucked and was dumb, but it was awesome to just witness what's going on within just like psychopathic, capitalistic / Christian hybrid radioactive mutations of what the fuck is psychedelics. So that was interesting. Anyway, I'll keep it simple. Oh man, if anyone has any questions about that, please feel free to ask me. And I have no shame. I have a lot of things to share about a lot of things, and I've tried a lot of things. Like, that's not me saying that I've tried heroin. I'm not interested in trying heroin. My father continues to have serious problems with heroin. And he's chosen that because he hasn't wanted to take my hand and be lifted out of it. And he actually tried to pull me down into it because of his denial that there's better things going on in life. Like, I haven't smoked meth intentionally. I know that I've experienced it because of again, that's a whole other story, but it's not that crazy of a story, but it's kind of crazy of a story. was giving Adderall and things like that. Have had experiences with that. I've had some really good experiences with opium in social settings with people, and it's very few and far between. But I think I can understand why people have an opium addiction. I think LSD is definitely trumped up to be more than it is. I think it's the false psychedelic. I think mushrooms are the real deal. It's a real psychedelic, and we could go into just the mycological history of where the origin of mushrooms on this earth. And I'm saying all this. I'm not saying I'm on I haven't had mushrooms for many years. I'm looking forward to the next time that I'm able to have mushrooms, and I'm with people that offered me mushrooms. But I'm really tight with my relationship with mushrooms, and I believe that it walks with me, and I don't need a constant reminder of what it's taught me, because it's it's part of the graduation, how weak of a teacher something would be if you endlessly needed to be validated or check in with it for every little thing. And I think that's where a lot of retardation happens within drug culture, and the false sense of confidence that comes from a lot of people. There's a perversion of what reverence is for relationship, and that carries out into our human interactions and our human relationships, because again, it's hard to really construct healthy relationships that encompass all of the things that are relevant and hold the space for it and allow for emotional intelligence to become sentient. And that's what this is all about, in my opinion. Because anyway, I'll say that for another time. It's a whole other philosophical dissection regarding emotional health, mental health, and physical health, and how they relate to the color wheel, and how all colors are distinct yet inseparable. So too is the case with emotional health, mental health, and physical health. And if any of those three are out of balance, then all three will be out of balance. And it's for the sake of shedding light on what is harmony and how often we compromise on that. So I think that kind of leads nicely into the next question. I want to say, right now I sometimes smoke tobacco off and on, and it's not regular, and I sporadically move through it. I enjoy my relationship with tobacco, but it is not regular. And I've revisited THC and marijuana back in October, and it's extremely irregular. It's not common, and it was good to just check in with these. Strangely enough, last week or the week before or something like this, I interviewed my friend Jason, and after the interview we were at a coffee house and we were just chilling and talking, and he was like, well, hypothetically, if I had a tab of acid and I offered it to you, would you take it? And he gave me more context around what's going on in his life, and he was transitioning that next day to go to Tennessee. Well, not that next day, but he wanted to take acid with me on Wednesday, and on Thursday he was going to be going to Tennessee and transitioning from the Austin area to reconnect with his parents. And he shared a lot about I don't want to share another man's story type of thing, but again, these common themes about addiction and this generational psychological decline that comes through, again, just severe emotional imbalances. And anyway, So he wanted to, he wanted to take a tab of LSD before that, and I was honored that he wanted to spend that with me. So, and I was curious, and so I said yes. I hadn't up to that point had LSD in over 10 years, and I enjoyed it. We had some fun. It wasn't like what crazy, but it was really. It was good connecting with him, but it was very like underwhelming and like kind of annoying to be in that chemical state, at some points. But it was, again, just hopefully you're just hearing what I'm saying. Is the point that I'm wanting to make here. Okay, all right. How do you view the concept of healing, and how do you personally prioritize health in relation to creative expression? Yeah, it's part of, as has maybe been evidenced in everything that I'm talking about. Healing and health is everything. I think that we really we have skewed priorities within this cultural identity, which is why it is endlessly in decay until it really dies, and then by the sort of like by merit of the corpse do we begin to we consume the corpse, and then we begin to make new things. Like we begin to change our patterns. That it's like more about the decomposition of this and honoring that it served a purpose. It has revealed a lot, but it needs to be transformed and transmuted into better things. And that's where I'm at. That I think there's a lot of solutions that are very simple and very accessible and very present that a lot of people don't want to believe in for whatever reason, and it's hard for me to understand that. I think it's the problem around trauma runs a lot deeper than I think is given credit to and credit for, because again, like society and the like these institutions would have to take responsibility for that. And like again, like it's like, we're not trying to put you in jail, like we're not trying to torture you for doing this, like we just need to acknowledge it and change the structure of these institutions so that like the spoken aim is actually being realized in life, and like there isn't a like blaming of the people that are being run through these institutional factories, and like being like, oh well, see, read this, we have to model, and it should be, but like you're the problem, like you're all the fucking problem. It's like, well, look at it. It's the problem is with the factories that are shaping the minds, that are creating just, again, like it's so discordant. And it's, again, you can't help but wonder, like maybe it's part of the whole divide and conquer to the utmost degree of hyper individualization, and like just like the fabrication of community that actually is like psychological and emotional enslavement. I don't know. Should we talk about that? I don't know. Anybody out there want to talk about that? No? Okay. Well, it's there. It's definitely there. So yeah, like I think healing is definitely part of a relationship with natural law and quality of life. And on one hand, I want to say that it is within each person to define what healing is, and on the other hand, I think that the problems have become so deeply enmeshed that thankfully there are like formulas and reproducible results that can be immediately introduced into people's lives so that they can benefit from like nervous system reset and proper nutrition and proper nourishment, and given the permission to be like, please just take please take as much time as you need to just like really reset and lay in the sun and go for a swim. And even if you got to masturbate, if you even like whatever, eat a bunch of food, you know what I mean? Like you got to smoke cigarettes, you got to please just know that you're being accepted, that it's totally understandable, that all of these all of this suppression, seriously, it is a colossal problem. But it's simple. It's so simple. And anyway, so you hear the blah blah blah, but who the fuck, who cares? Who cares about any of my? Yeah, thank you. Whoever you are, I celebrate you and congratulations for being with me. I'm 1 hour and 20 minutes into this monologue. Hopefully you hear what I'm saying, though. I definitely believe that it's a paradox of like healing there's formula in it because natural law wants to show us like the predictable results that are accessible, and it's like if you do these things, definitely you're going to get those results 100%. Like it's not a lie. It's not some people are lucky and others aren't lucky. It's the way that you're doing it. Definitely. All right. What truly moves, inspires you to be an artist? How would you define your relationship with this source of inspiration? Nature is everything in my eyes, and especially, again, I could go on, and it would be if I really wanted to be dramatic, I could cry for you here about just how much I love like existence and like the complexity of everything all the time, and just like how it's so serious and also it's so it's so ridiculous and humorous, and what I've touched within my connection with the universe, and those conversations that I've had because of my own isolation and like needing to get away from so much to like reconcile my traumas and being in nature and et cetera and et cetera, and just again having those considerations regarding like the sentient nature of existence, and just again like that whole thing about like if a fish doesn't realize it's in water because it is born in water, lives in water, dies in water, it is everything, and of course like it can come to the surface and look outside of it, but that's still just something that's inaccessible. It's part of life, but it isn't for it. That I think that the air that we breathe and everything that is all, it's just like, again, it's just so ridiculous. The whole thing makes you throw up if you actually like really look at it all. It's just so overwhelming, but it's all sentient, and I can understand why people are, what's that word? Atheistic. I understand that. I think that that's more of a problem within interpersonal relationships and traumas, and how easy it is to just be like, there's no God, there's nothing, and like that's the approach, and that's the relationship I have with life. It's just like nothing is real. Nothing exists as sentient, and like I'm not arguing that like the table is sentient. I don't understand the nature of like manufactured things and to what degree they're sentient, but I appreciate them, and I understand that they come from the earth and they are of nature, and that goes on and on of just about like, again, just like how overlooked it is of the miracle of all of these insane vehicles that are all over the fucking place all the time, and just how stupid it all is. But like, it's like these are deep mind things that we've been able to not only bring out of the earth, but shape according to a vision that we have in our mind. And that's not, again, like we could, like, I don't want to talk about Gerald Ford, and I don't want to, because obviously there's so much insanity and so much corruption and power trips with all of this, and it's been used and weaponized, and again, like, it's just another form of enslavement, another form of control because of capitalism, and nothing's personal, it's just business, and just like, oh my God, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? It's so exhaustive, you know? And it's in many ways, I feel like it's part of the shadow elements of the universe coming into an awareness of its own nature. Of, again, like, if at the end of the day that there is, if it is one supreme, like, super entity organism matrix that, and like, again, like, microcosm, macrocosm of, like for me, like, it's just like, wow, trillions of cells and all this in my body, and like all of it, and like some of it, like, again, like from my mouth to my anus is like still a part of the outside world, and I'm like a tube. It's like, wow, whoa. It's like, yeah, great. Also, like, I am just myself, and all of this is happening, and the function of it all is mirrored in my own health and my own and like any ending, blah blah blah. You hear what I'm saying? Hopefully. And I feel like that's part of the again, it's like way more complex because there's way more things going on, and like, but I believe that in this like grand, super prismic organism of the universe that doesn't know where it came from, doesn't know its mommy and daddy, there's nothing else. It just is the only thing that ever exists, and its responsibility is to make meaning within itself. You know what I mean? That, like, I would argue that it's the specialty of humanity that we are the primordial beings that are here to populate the universe. And that's my opinion. Like, again, like, there's so many things about aliens and, like, you know, like these ancient, like, whatever the hell, like, whatever fucking, you know, whatever, like, it's like, sure, like, that there's a sentience that is being communicated through radio waves and signal and, like, transferred, but I don't believe that there are, like, alien beings. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not getting to that, but I think there's a lot of value in, like, the consideration of, like, maybe it's our responsibility, actually, of being humans, of, like, because we could talk about chimeras, and we could talk about, like, the intersplicing of different biological forms into the humanoid, like, bipedal, structure to, like, change, like, our own attributes, and again, like, that's definitely happening. They're already doing that. I think that's going to be the next psyop of these things that are going to become socially integrated as if they are the aliens, and there's going to be these crash sites with these chimeras, and then they're going to make up stories to then, like, obscure the truth. But I believe underneath of all of that, like, humans are the primordial, like, the originators for the entire universe, and that we are in the process of beginning those pioneering steps into new territories, and by means of our ability to address, like, our own paranoias and our own, like, war mind and all of this stuff, I think that's going to definitely shape the conversation moving forward as far as, like, the three-dimensional realm goes. Again, like, there's so many things that goes into this question of what truly moves and inspires me to be an artist. What would you define your relationship with the source of inspiration? So, like, all of these things, at the end of the day, like, I am a son of the earth, you know, and my father is, you know, the cosmos, and I love being a human, and I love the earth that I live on, and I am not interested in a lot of things that seem to be like the leading edge of technology. I'm interested in communion with our human nature and building new community dynamics and societal models that integrate all of these advanced technologies while also reconnecting with our human nature and where we've come from, and healing the connection between the past, and like structuring a really solid foundation for the future, and holding all of these things in consideration, but like knowing that for myself that I love making art, and I love animals, and I love spending time with healthy men, and I love spending time with healthy women, and I love spending time with healthy children, and I love cooking, and I love I love exercising, and I love traveling, and I love hiking, and I love camping, and I love I'm very simple. Strangely enough, I'm a very simple person. I'm not interested in a lot of things, but I know what I'm interested in, and in my opinion, my interests are the common interests of all people. And so that's where I come from with my art, and up to this point, all of these things are part of my message and my intention as an artist, and what I am wanting to make real. And again, it has to do so much with collaboration and a desire from other people to consider, and I want to hear what other people want, and I want to be supportive of other people's visions as well, but I do believe there's a lot of value in the integration of lifestyles as a good foundational place to start prototyping new models and new healthy dynamics of creative spaces. How do I view the concept of community? How important is community to you in relation to your creative expression? Does it drive your future vision? Do you hold a future vision in relation to your art? I would say community is really everything within my creative vision and expression, and again paradoxical because it's very hyper individuated, and a lot of what is my practice is just exercising the muscles of creation. And because I have my own outlet for my own self-expression, that I don't feel a need to control circumstances with other people. But I do believe through my journeys and through what I've witnessed is that a lot of people aren't in that practice for themselves, and so they don't know what their expression is, and there is this weird thing about control, and that there is this weird thing about non-compromising on vision and wanting to be seen as the alpha, the sigma man. And again, I'm not saying that even within the bro mentality, that's even within off the grid and other community dynamics that are out there. It's just that it's a lot of hierarchical structuring that isn't really, it's not really driving towards anything meaningful where you can really get behind it. It's just a strange theater where boys are hiding behind the idea of a man but he's also still a boy, and he's very sensitive about and inflamed, and he's a good guy for as long as you don't challenge him. But if you have to if you challenge him with questions and he hasn't thought about them, then he takes it as an insult because he's being exposed for the lack of like total vision within his concept. You know what I mean? So just like these types of things are huge. They're huge elements within. On and on, man. It's a lot. You know, thankfully can't get bored. You know, there's a lot to take into consideration and certainly a factor into the equation. My idea of community is again what I've been talking about, is that like everyone understands what's going on, you know, in the theater, around the theater, behind the scenes, you know, and people are aware of everything that it takes to maintain the appearance of balance, because that appearance of balance can easily be lost if we're not all contributing to it. And there's a huge difference between like consciously doing that versus like being programmed to be contributing according to some other person's design of what you must be. And then it's like no wonder everyone is like fixated on AI overlords, because people have become that themselves, that they've become so deeply programmed and so absent of free thought that they don't really understand what's going on. For as long as they're giving a paycheck, they'll do whatever the hell is claiming meaning, you know? And I think community really comes from a place where everyone has a really regulated nervous system, and that there isn't any pressure to perform on anyone, but there's that genuine access of desire to know that it's just what is wanting to be done. And because of how much the community has supported a person in their own development and well-being, that they give back genuinely because they want others to also be that. And there's that sense of guilt and shame even that they like, that they're taking all of that, and again, it's just part of the natural equation. It's part of natural law. Like a person, we could say that there's a lot of compassion, even in like the you know, like the and I know this is very controversial, but like the villain archetype of like, in a lot of ways, that like villains throughout, like, you know, the structure of a story within Hollywood and etc. It's just like the villain is trying to shed light on his or her own trauma, and like how much they've been brutalized and so much injustice has been compounded that just like enough. I'm going to make everybody aware that this is what's going on theatrically. And it's like, oh, well, they're doing a service, but like if we just again continue to be like, well, he was bad because he was bad, and that's the only reason he was bad. He was bad, but we're good, and there's nothing else going on here. And then that's the story. It's just like, well, you can never know who's bad anymore because there's they're just bad. It's like, wow. Have you heard about trauma? Have you heard about patterns? Have you heard about karma? Crazy, actually. Crazy when you actually consider Adolf Hitler was a human, and the traumas shaped his worldview, and he was neglected for so long. And that's like me not advocating for Adolf Hitler. Like we could go in many different directions. Like Obama, also very traumatized. Like, wow, if you actually consider what Obama has done, like damn, he's really a psychopath. But why is he a psychopath? Now it makes more sense. Now he's made a huge mess. We could go Trump. We could go, again, it's a long inbred bloodline that goes back to like King whatever, whatever. Yeah, look at it. Look at it. Wacky, wacky, wacky. What a story. What a lie. What a lie. Do I hold a future vision in relation to my art? I do. I definitely do. And it's in all of this. The immediate, maybe short term, long term, I'd love to find common minds through this project of like a generating like a cohort of like-minded artists and creatives across a variety of expression and modalities and disciplines, and generating a message for for like communal support or like grassroots support of people that want to and again, like, I have a huge body of artwork, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but that want to purchase my art or purchase prints of my art or etc., and that they can hang that on their homes, and they know that that purchase went to building a vision that they see as meritorious and noble, and that art represents hope, and that like anybody can genuinely become involved in the project, but obviously like we have to talk about it, and we have to figure out like are you really ready for it? Are genuinely, like, if you're not, that's okay. Like, the ship isn't like in, like, you're not missing anything. It's just like, where are you at in your life? And maybe it's for the future, a future point for you to become integrated. And again, like, all of these different processes within like self-awareness and self-development and breaking free of the patterns and integrating new approaches and being dynamic, and like being able to like be in that like place where you're being triggered but you're like wanting to trust, and then you're able to like have a little bit of humor because you're not being attacked but you feel like you're being attacked because of your own PSD. You know what I mean? And like, it's like, oh man, like being able to like hug people and be like, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention, and how quickly I wanted to be paranoid and distrustful of you, but I was able to circumvent that pattern, and little by little I'm losing sight of that, right? And then like, because of healthy relationships and healthy dynamics with other people, that like it builds the vision, it builds the structure, and it builds this new model. And then when you're interacting with other people that are so disingenuous and are like psychopaths, and it's like, oh my God, there's no question what your intentions are and where you're coming from, because I've known what good people are, and they're in my life, and what are you talking about? And again, like having it's like, please, like, again, like if there's not a if a person identifies with a psychopathic tendency, then there's no ability to address it, right? And again, like, it's like all of these different things. It's a whole thing about accountability, transparency, authenticity, all of these good words, right? Anyway. Well, on and on I could go, but I feel like this is coming to a good landing point, and I'd be surprised if anyone actually watches this all the way through to the end of this at this point. But if you are, thank you so much for your time and your interest and your consideration of my message and who I am as a man in this world at this time, and how I'm choosing to make sense of life through the most creative and positive perspective in light of all of the things that are happening, which are discordant and are dense and are confused and are insane, like just like supremely insane. I'm very optimistic. I'm very hopeful. I know that there are solutions. I see that it takes one step at a time, and certainly into this direction. That's my idea.